Hello, and welcome to the second lesson on my current After Effects tutorials. In this one, we'll be covering translations, anchor points, rotation, scale, parenting, keyframing, animation, and a blur effect. We'll also be covering a quick how the counter works, rotation amount counter works. Yeah, which is just basically in this format. These are the hotkeys I will be using most of the time. Yep, pretty much all of them. So we're going to be making this by the end. If it likes to run now, it is running. Okay, so let's just click it over and here we are. And that is pretty much just a quick boom 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 with kinetic text. Now, as you can see, I have got them anchored around, the starting point of each one, and they all rotate independently, and they all rotate in the same direction. And this is pretty simple to do, so let's go. First thing I'm going to do, new composition. So, I'm going to name this, let me think about this, anchor points. I'm just going to keep it, probably lower this to 10 seconds, because as you can see this is only really 6 seconds-ish long, so I can just stick it down 10 seconds, and keep the rest of it. Quick note, earlier on I logged into After Effects to see that for some reason my square pixels had been changed to something like DV1 PAL. Make sure it's square pixels, I believe. That will keep it to the same aspect ratio as your PC monitor. I was wondering why some things were being compressed and others weren't. So, the background is just my animation background. So, first thing I'm going to do is add in some text. So, I'm going to just add in crazy. There we are. So, crazy. And then what we can do is after we've created the first word that we want to make, you click on it and click Control D and just duplicate it twice. Now double click on whatever you just duplicated and rename it to the second word. Click down here, click on the third one. Now the reason I kept all three in the same location is because, assuming that you would like to have them all on the same plane at the end, and they're all the same height and width if you select them all. Maybe that's slightly lower, I believe. Yes, that's probably to the animation. And basically, it just allows you to keep them all in line. So I'm going to click the crazy and start dragging it and hold shift. And hovering over here. So if you hold shift, it keeps it, it can only go over like that. Vertical, directly vertical, or directly horizontal. So good for keeping it, in line. So that looks about right. So now we've got our words done. Crazy hedgehog. So next we're going to edit the anchor points. Now the anchor points are the axis at which it rotates over. So here's the anchor point on this one. See how it rotates over the anchor point. It'll scale, from the anchor point as well. So I always prefer my anchor points to be in the middle, but I've kept it like this because this is generic. So to change the anchor points, there are two ways. First way, hit A in your timeline, and it'll pull up your anchor point. Now, changing the anchor point like this will actually move your picture, and the anchor point will stay still. It's kind of a weird way of doing it, but that's how it works. For people, well, if you don't want to do it like that, and you want to do it more rough hand, except you can see what's happening kind of way, you can click on this tool up here, which is Y by default. Yeah, also After Effects doesn't know how to do hotkeys. It's A if you click in the timeline, but Y if you click up here. Totally makes sense. So, you can can just drag the anchor point, which I'm going to stick right about here at the edge box. I'm going to just, overlap it with this middle box. And I'm going to do it to all of these. So you can just click on it. You can use this to click and drag that in. Middle mouse button is used for panning while in the view area, the workspace. There we are. So now we've got the 3 anchor points, pretty much looking like they're practically in between these two. So that means it'll rotate on its anchor points. Now that means that if I was now to rotate this, hit R in the timeline to pull up the rotation tool, but pivot around that point. If you're in this upper window, you hit W and it'll pull up the rotation tool, which you can click and then rotate like that. So now let's do parenting. So I want this to move around this axis, but I want to happen is when I move this, I don't want it to move this entire hedge and crazy at the same time. I just want this to pivot on that last axis. Now to do this, use parenting tools. And there's 2 ways. One is you would like to parent the hedgehog to the hedge, or the hand to the forearm. So go into this, parent, none, you click hedge. You can do it the same way with this. Now, another way, which if you only have a few things on here, is just, quite simple to use as well, if you know which one's which, is to use this, the pick whip, as it's called. And you can drag it, and drop. Drag it, drag it, parent this to create, so they've already been parented, so if I clear these out, parent, that to that, parent, that to that. That's as simple as it. Now, when I rotate this, it'll rotate by itself. I'll do it with hedge, and then crazy. Now, a good thing is that they'll rotate at the same time, and so that can rotate as that's rotating at the same time. So it can make like a triple rotation kind of thing going on through the anchor points. And that's how you'd animate like an arm, for example. Now, so just to prove my point, I can rotate that and rotate that. And keep stay like that, and you can, while it's animating, that can be spinning around in a different direction. So that's how you rotate. Now, not anchor points, keyframes. Keyframes are what you use to animate the core of animation. So to add a keyframe, you click the stopwatch. Now we're going to be doing this. So at the start, they're all folded up. So we're going to quickly get into that. So we're going to set all of these. We're going to set all the rotation values to minus 180 degrees. Now the reason it is minus 180 instead of just 180, which you'd think do the same thing, is because when we animate it, we want it to come over the top and kind of slam down. That boom, boom, and boom. So doing it the other way would be anti-clockwise, and it would animate like that instead. Which, if you want, if you want like the first one to do that and the second one to go over, you can do just that. So, first of all, now we've done that, we only want to keyframe this first part. Now take it to 2 seconds if you want. Yes. Actually, I'm going to take the first one to. How much have I got in here? Let's check. 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to put a keyframe now. Now, a keyframe, which you do by clicking that, basically says at this point, at this keyframe, which is at this time, it's this value. Now at 1 second, I'm going to change this to 0. And now what the program says is, from here to here, this value changes from minus 180 to 0, which is what gives you that pivot. Now at this second point, you can then go, okay, well now that's finished rotating, you want to rotate the hedge. So click the keyframe, and I say at this point, 180 degrees. Now you put it forward by 1 second. You type 0. There you are. And it says, oh, well, okay, so after that's finished, we want to do this. Same here, so we click that, go forward a second, and Change that to 0. So now we have a nice, smooth, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so now that's sorted, we can just minimize these, and we can just hit the spacebar to quickly render it. Change it to half. There we are, crazy hedgehog. And that is what I have, and it's the exact same style on this. Now if you noticed that in this one, it starts off slow, and then builds up speed and then kind of crashes. And it has that blur effect. So, we're going to do that. So, what I've done is I've used something in the keyframe assistant. Now, to pull up all the things that you currently have keyframed, if you highlight all of the ones that you want and hit U, it just basically says whatever has had a keyframe attached to it, it'll pop up. So if I, keyframe the scale and everything as well, then all of that had a keyframe, activated would pop up as well. So, an easy ease, if you right click one of these, is one of these, free. And what it does is, it smooths the start and end and makes it slightly more realistic. For example, when you hit a ball, okay, no, a car accelerating. Now, car would accelerate and would go forwards really fast and then slow down towards the end. So if we just quickly make a quick shape, and I can animate this. So let's animate the position. So at 0 seconds, it's not moving. 4 seconds, let's start this layer. So, and then at 4 seconds, it's gone over here. Now, if we just play it, it will move at the same speed the entire time till it finishes. Now, if we put an easy ease on the start, easy ease in, as it is the in. If you notice, starts off slightly slower, continues on. Now if we put an easy ease out, it's slightly slower towards the end. That basically just, same thing. Oh, easy ease towards the end. There we are. It's smoother and smoother and slower. So that's what easy ease tool does. I don't normally use these two. Normally the standard easy ease is probably the best just to use. F9 on the keyboard, click it, F9, and you'll make it into an easy ease. So that's how you make like the start beginning. You want to start off slow and speed up. You can use easy ease. That's pretty much what it does. Okay, so we're gonna have it. So each of the starts is slightly slower. So we're gonna go easy ease. Now you can actually select multiple points at once. Hold shift. Now we can do this again. Now, this doesn't have quite the same acceleration as the other one. So as you notice, it's like, it does start off slower, but not very long. So we want to speed up towards the end as well. So when I was doing it in this, I kind of went into something slightly more complex. I went into this. No, if we actually let it get to the right area. Come on. Oh yeah, hold on. Here we are. And this is how it starts off. Would help if I went to wrong. Okay, so it starts off slow, 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 and there's really steep curve. Grading on the curve dictates the speed. So it starts off slow, it goes really quick. Now you can actually copy if you've got something that you already like. Copy this. Now this is getting quite complex, so this isn't really what you need to do. The easy does do it, but to get the exact same effect, you can just do this extra step if you would like. Now hit this, and you paste. And what this will do, it will stick it in, except it will stick in at the same time. So you can say, okay, so 2 seconds to 3 seconds is when, why it won't happen. So we can just drag this. Oh, let's not try and change it to 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Now I get the same, slow start and then boom. And yeah, that is pretty much all it is. So you can go into the second one. You can change this value. You can say, aha, so let's paste this over here. And we want to delete the current one. I have this one, goes from 1 second to 2 seconds. And then same with this one, which you can pretty much just directly replace. I'll forget to delete this one first. Yeah, Hog seems to be going forward a tad too much. And that could be to do with this. There we are. So just make sure it's still straight lined if you use this technique. So it just goes crazy hedgehog. Now with the sounds, I went on to a free website called freesoundeffects.com and I typed in something like metal bang. Okay, on up. We can put slight explosion to get the sound effect I used. This is the one I use, and that just gives me that boom, 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 boom. So using this one, so that's all cool, and that's pretty much how you make it. And now let's do the blur. So at the end of every, kind of fall, there's a kind of like a blur effect. The camera shaking a bit is what it's trying to represent. Now, camera shake is something else you can do, but pretty complex and no point. So we can just use the box blur. Now at the moment, if you drag this box blur onto any of these, it only blur that particular object. Now if you want to blur the entire scene, go into the layer, new, adjustment layer. Same as the adjustment layers in Illustrator and After Effects, pretty much. It's an invisible layer until you add an effect, and what this layer will do is it will apply the effect to everything under it. So I'm going to put in blocks, blur, blocks, box blur. You see what happens? Yes, it blurs everything. So when it goes boom, there's a slight blur. So I'm going to keyframe. Say at 1 second, there's no blur, and then, because it's directly hit the floor, and I'd say about say about 0.2, go up to about 20. No, that's too much. 10, and then 8 frames later, go back to 0. And that'll just basically just give. It's not as sharp as everyone, but I think it'll do. Now what you can do is after you've applied this effect, if you want to, you can drag that back. So it's a bit of a sharper blur. You can copy these keyframes, put the counter to 2 seconds, paste, and let's give you the blur effect for each kind of pow. Now you can put the sound effects in. So if we just go into project, which is hidden up over there. Now in this, I have the same sound effect copied 3 times, and in the waveform, you match the start of the boom in the waveform, which is like right about here, and that is what you would use to match up to the kind of the audio. Yeah, so you'd say, okay, at 1 second, you want the first boom at 1 second. So that's 1 second, but as you can see, there's a slight delay. So you use this bar, which drags the entirety of those keyframes, and you pull it back a bit. And then that would mean 2 seconds. And then you have a problem, because when I made this sound effects, it was for this, which is 1.5 seconds per kind of rotation. And this one is 1 second per rotation to make it simpler. So what we can do is, that's 1 second. First one's 1 second, second one's 1.5 seconds. And you can quite literally just, before I did the waveform, I just match this up. So 2 seconds. Let's just match this one up. 3 seconds. Let's just match this one up. That's about right. So now, 3M. Get rid of the old one. Put the new one in. There we open up the audio in this one. Here we are. Look, 1 second, 2 seconds, and 3 seconds. So if we quickly do this. And that is how you make the boom, boom, boom. Now I can understand that doing the kind of animation with this kind of graph may be a bit confusing. You don't, of course, have this copy. I shall put a link up, if I can find out how to, of the project files, which you should be able to get from me if you ask. And I'll email the project files to you, actually. Yes, that'll be a better idea. If you would like the project files, email me. I'll put my email in the description. Now, the second part of this was scaling. Now, scaling basically means, the ratio of height to width for when you first import an object. So, we're going to just be doing something quick like this. Let's just quickly close these spare ones. Okay, let's do it again. So basically it just goes forward and scales up. Now that gives the illusion that it's actually traveling towards the camera. So it goes from there and comes up here. Now, all I use is a quick shape. Put the background up, which isn't really significant. And I did 2, and only 2 different keyframes in this entire thing. And the first one, actually 3 keyframes if you include the blur effect. Now, if we ignore the blur, first thing I did to make this is, let's start this from scratch and do new composition. Now I'm just going to quickly copy these 2. You don't need these 2 objects, at all to do it. So I'm just going to quickly do this stuff. Now, first thing you want to do is input some text. So we're going to put scale. There we are. Okay, so the scale can be brought up by hitting S in this little panel down there. So if you hit S, scale. Now, if you see what happens when you scale up and down, from where the anchor point is, of course, it'll scale the picture perfectly, in ratio up and down. Now, first thing you're going to want to do is change the anchor point from there to this bottom, which means when you scale it up, it scales up from the ground. So it looks like it's coming towards you if it's traveling downwards. So first thing is going to restrict the scale to 45 degrees. Put it back here. Oops. Put up there. Now to create the shape layer, I got it's just a square. Oh, okay. Tip: don't have something selected when you try and import a shape because it makes a mask instead. So, just a simple square. Now put the square here, and you have to turn into a 3D object by clicking this little cube into transform, and go back into rotation if you like, and go out to about 85. Now from this, just scale it up, and then sideways, to get your desired kind of thingy. Now I kind of was stupid actually. Let's go back and undo that. And I forgot. The first thing I forgot to do is do my anchor point. Now the anchor point, as you can see, pulls everything that's scaling. So I'm going to drag this anchor point down to the bottom. Then I'm going to rotate it forwards by 85 degrees from the anchor point. I'm going to drag it down. Then I'm going to expand it forwards. This anchor point really doesn't seem to be liking me today. It should be not working at all. So, just confused. Anyhow, the same principle as what I showed you in this video. So I just got kind of like this. Made it really long, way to scale. Made it wide, just made it look like, you know, it was getting off in the distance like a road kind of shape. Probably an easiest thing to do actually was go to Illustrator if you're still learning to use that, and just use the pen tool. Click, 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 click. Fill it in with whatever colour you want. I've picked the blue, and just import it into After Effects. Now, I'm going to put the scale, and it's going to start off like kind of resting at the tip over there. Now, we're going to do some animation now. So, first we're going to click the position and scale. Now, we're going to say 4 seconds. In 4 seconds it's going to come from here and down here. So, let's first animate the position. Rather unremarkable thing, it's up to down. And next, we're going to scale it up. So I say about that much would be correct, you know, and it looks like it's scaled reasonably well. It looks like, you know, it's getting bigger as it gets to us. No, actually, I could increase that by a bit more. Maybe 230 seems about right. As it comes towards us, it scales up. Now, if you've noticed this little chain, if you unclick that, it means it is no longer in proportion with, you know, its ratio is no longer locked. And right is vertical and left is horizontal. And then you can scale it freely as you would like. For this quick animation, we're going to keep it locked because we want to scale up evenly to make it look more realistic. So that's pretty much just moving from A to B. Next thing we can do is we can add a blur. So we can go to FX and just type in fast blur. Now this is because we only want the scale to blur, nothing else. So we can keyframe blurriness. Now at the back it's far away-ish. I'm going to put a blur of about 15 on it. I'm going to come to when it's finished the animation and put another blur of 0. And basically all that means is as it comes forwards, you get slightly clearer and clearer and clearer scale. Now, another way to, you know, change the scale of an object is to use these pins, or these points. However, when you drag a point, it is no longer, even though the little kind of chain is still linked, it is no longer actually in proportion. So if you scale it like that, and let go, it will then scale it in proportion to what you've manually resized it as. And so if you're going to use these handles and you want it to stay in, you know, perfect 100% proportion, you start dragging it, hold shift, and it locks it as well. And there you have it. That is how you would animate the crazy hedgehog, kind of like falling over and banging and scaling. Thank you, and this is lesson 2 finished.